And let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
Come on, let's go!
Reloading. Run!
Left 4 Dead 1 had a good, fictionally justifiable cast of guns, the M16 being a standard police and military weapon, for example. In Left 4 Dead 2, we had the opportunity to do something a bit less generic and use some more interesting guns, while still being aware that we had to justify their place in the game. The desert rifle, for example, is used to suggest that the military had rerouted guns meant for the Middle East back to deal with the domestic crisis, hence the desert camouflage scheme on the gun. The ever-popular AK-47, which is actually part AK-74, is so plentiful that it's easy to justify its appearance almost anywhere, whereas the silenced SMG is more of an underground, criminal-looking weapon, so it's interesting to think how this has found its way into survivors' hands. The hunting rifle from Left 4 Dead 1 is back, and we've added a military sniper rifle which is double the clip size and is more of a scoped semi-automatic assault rifle, rather than the classic bolt-action sniper rifle, which would be ineffective against the Horde.
Run!
Left 4 Dead 2 also features a variety of pistols, including a custom civilian handgun, a standard issue police sidearm, and a large caliber magnum.
Let's save some bullets for this one.
Because Left 4 Dead 1 took place entirely during the night, it was fairly straightforward to light the path we wanted players to take. For campaigns that take place during the day, we had to find other tools to help the player along.
Keep running!
The most valuable tools were visible landmarks, such as gas station signs, overpasses, the bridge, and smoke from wrecked aircraft.
It's off all right.
As with our efforts to replace the first aid kit, replacing the pain pills item was a challenge. Initial versions of Adrenaline allowed players to run faster and perform certain actions faster, such as reviving other players. But the pills already give 50 temporary health points, which is enough health for injured players to run at full speed again, so the Adrenaline needed something extra. We expanded the actions that could be affected by Adrenaline, shortening the time it takes to use health kits, defibrillators, and upgrade packs. We sped up the player beyond their normal maximum speed and made them resistant to being slowed down by hits from the infected. Although it doesn't give as much health as the pain pills, we found many interesting strategies began to emerge from the well-timed use of Adrenaline.
As we added more special infected characters to Left 4 Dead 2, we faced a challenge in designing unique sounds for them that players could easily recognize and distinguish from the other specials and from the common infected. In Left 4 Dead, the 4 male specials each had both a distinct tonal range and a character attribute to keep them unique. For instance, the Boomer's vocalizations were kind of a slow, deep, bassy gastric horror. As we added the new specials into the mix, it became increasingly difficult to avoid impinging on the sonic space of the previous specials. We found that we couldn't rely so much on using the tonal range for distinction, and instead had to push harder on characterization to help them to read clearly to players.
Reloading!
For example, the jockey is in the high, bright tonal range of the smoker, and even the upper end of the hunter. But since the infection has left his brain in a constant state of hysterical mania, his vocalizations read clearly apart from these other specials. Sometimes it can be challenging to find a characterization that will lend itself to both a special's active and idle or lurking modes. For instance, with the Charger, we started out with a non-verbal angry muttering, kind of a griping bark that we all liked. Though the personality in his idle states was interesting and distinct, we found that we needed to ramp his vocalizations up to a more sustained yell for his attacks to get the right sonic intensity for these events. In subsequent playtests, however, we found that players were often surprised when attacked by the Charger, as they would associate him only with the aggressive attack vocalizations he makes from the point that he sees them through his charge, and since he would generally see players before they saw him, they didn't have a chance to connect him with the angry, non-verbal mutterings of his idle states. So we ended up recording new vocalizations for these states, mixing in elements of his more strident calls and yells amid the gripes and barks of his idle states, so that players could more readily make the leap to recognizing a lurking Charger in the vicinity.
The Source Engine's animation system is a powerful tool that lets us create animations procedurally instead of authoring each of them individually by hand. There are various reasons for doing this, which become clear when we consider the challenge of animating the jockey riding a survivor. From the start of the jockey's design, we wanted the survivor to be able to fight back to some degree. With that in mind, we decided it would be vital for the survivor to know the jockey's intent, regardless of how successful he was at acting on it. So even though you may be stuck against the table going nowhere with a jockey on your back, we want you to understand that the jockey is really trying to get you out that door at the end of the room, and around a corner where your friends can't help you. To accomplish this, we implemented a system of animation layers for the survivor that would work in conjunction with the jockey. These layers are attached to different controls that the code interacts with, called pose parameters. The first layer consists of the survivor's upper body from the waist up, which allows the survivor's reactions to work in sync with the jockey's motion. The second layer is the survivor's locomotion, constrained to the lower half of his body from the waist down. So, in the scenario we just described, when the jockey is in full control and has a clear path to the door, the code tells the upper body of the survivor and the body of the jockey to lean in that direction, and sets a pose parameter for the survivor's legs to move along that vector as well. However, things get more interesting when the survivor regains some control and steers himself to get stuck on the table. Even though you have stopped moving towards the door, we don't want the jockey's animation to suddenly sit straight up and give the impression he isn't still trying to steer you there. By splitting the survivor's animation into two different animation layers that we composite together, your upper body and the jockey can remain leaning towards the door, while the code tells the legs to stop walking because you're stuck on the table and can't advance. This robust system of procedurally compositing upper and lower body animation layers and position in real time, as we've shown in this case, saved us a lot of authoring time as well as memory inside the game, both of which are finite and very valuable on any project.